Yo, you're listening to Loughy Savoca, a fantasy football podcast. What's going on, man? Episode 3, talking, I don't even know how to put this in terms of what the title is. More so, will these offenses be good or will they suck? And can they take that leap forward that many are projecting them to? Is that fair?
That's fair, but you didn't like the little brand I put on it. Show me something. Plus, you didn't drop the voice. Loughy Savoca, a fantasy football podcast. Come on, I gotta throw my take on it. Show me something. That's how I feel about these offense. Show me that you are better than we think you are, because their ADPs for a lot of these players not that high. You don't have to spend a huge amount of fantasy draft capital. So I'm excited to dig into this one. We talked some top offenses in episode 2, and now we dig into the meat and potatoes. We get into the real grind of who's actually going to take the possible next step, huh?
Nothing pisses me off more than listening to people go, I won't touch that guy this season. I won't go near him this season. It's like he's being drafted in the 10th round. The injury risk. Yeah, but if he's not injured, you have a clear path to insane success for a guy that you're drafting as a bench player. And I see a lot of that, not just with these teams, but in general this season. We saw it last year with a lot of guys. I mean, James Conner being an example of someone that goes, oh, he can't stay healthy. He can't do anything. And then he ends up being like a top 6 running back on the season. Sure, those are an exception to the rule to some extent, but I think with a lot of teams that we're going to talk about today, you're getting something very similar where people go, nope, this offense is going to suck. I want nothing to do with them. Wouldn't touch them no matter what. No player is undraftable, especially if they're being drafted where you have virtually zero. The risk is entirely mitigated with a lot of these guys. If they suck, they suck. You still have a starting lineup ahead of them.
2 fallacies. We'll start right off the bat. Number 1, there is no difference about the expectations between a 10th round pick and a 14th round pick and a 15th round pick and an 18th round pick. If you get any startable weeks beyond, say, 1 startable week from double-digit round picks, you've picked well. The expectations are incredibly low in fantasy drafts. You win or lose in the single-digit rounds because that's where a majority of our league winners, not all of them, but that's what really we're hunting for. If you've ever played in an auction draft, you know this. The minute you hit the 10th or 11th round based on whatever roster constructions you play with in your league, all those players are $1. All of them from the double-digit rounds on or just about there. Second fallacy, he burned me last year. I think this is the number one thing you can take advantage of, especially in your home league, your office league. He burned me last year. What does that have to do with this year? Especially from an injury standpoint, yes, I know that players who touch the ball more, get tackled more, are going to get hurt more. But the idea that players and offenses and situations can't improve from season to season is still the biggest blind spot for so many casual players. Let's try to take advantage and dig into who's taking that next step.
Oh, I will certainly be taking advantage of that one. Hello, Miles Sanders. How you doing, pal?
No question about it. I'm ready to be hurt again.
Everything points towards a better season. And like you said, if I'm hurt again, I'm hurt again. 7th round pick, I lose out on it. What are you going to do? Shit happens. But there's a lot of those. And I think when you look at some of the teams that we're dealing with, you also have something that's contrary to what you were talking about. It's the notion that the consensus becomes this team, these offensive skill players are all worth way more than we've seen from them, in the sense that you've got a rookie quarterback or a rookie running back that's still running behind an incumbent running back that had a great season last year. I could give you several examples of that, specifically Buffalo, Cook, or with Walker in Seattle. I'm not saying that they won't pan out. What I'm saying is so often these guys get steamed to the point where you're like, this guy hasn't taken an NFL snap. He's never been a good pass blocker, or he's never been good in pass protection. And there's a guy behind them that was the RB2 over the final quarter of the season last year and played 100% of snaps in the conference divisional rounds, or in the divisional round game. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I guess we could start with a team like Jacksonville. That they're kind of what I was alluding to when I said everyone just gets super excited, where it was like, remember Laviska Shenault last year? People were all over this guy before we ever saw Trevor Lawrence. Was Trevor Lawrence worse than I think any of us would have expected? Was this offense just under a bad coaching staff and a bad head coach? Were they stagnant? Yes, of course. There were plenty of problems there. But there's so many question marks when you come to a team like Jacksonville in Lawrence's rookie season. How do you view them this year now that we're coming into it with a new regime, second year for Trevor Lawrence and a healthy Travis Etienne?
It's a better team this year. It's a significantly better team this year. You got a first-round running back, regardless of how you feel about the draft capital spent. That's what you got. Travis Etienne was considered a consensus first-round pick. And before that injury, I was going to be high on him. I have a video coming out later in the week on the Stokastic Best Ball channel that said we were kind of saved from ourselves last season. We would have been so high on Travis Etienne. But this year, with an offensive coaching staff that certainly knows what they're doing compared to the 2021 Jaguars coaching staff, I think you're going to see a much more competent Trevor Lawrence. I saw some film analysis that showed that Trevor Lawrence is still very, very capable as a passer, but had a receiving core that clearly wasn't running the routes that he expected them to run. Lots of decision-making errors from his receiving core, not from Trevor Lawrence. Those are things that you can only see corrected by a more competent staff and a more competent set of wide receivers. They went out and got some players. Christian Kirk, as we mentioned in episode 1, kind of set off a firestorm throughout the league. I still think Marvin Jones is quite competent at receiver. This lets Laviska Shenault slide into a more traditional slot role, which I think fits him very, very well. And with the backfield all shored up, in my opinion, with Travis Etienne, I don't think they rushed James Robinson back. This is not a regime that, relied previously on James Robinson. This is one of those offenses that is really tricky, but they play in a division where they might have some gimme games if they even get towards league average. In some of these places, they were highly inefficient with Urban Meyer at the helm last year.
So that's all well and good, right? But then how do we actually break down who's the most valuable option in this passing game where you've got Shenault? Shenault, for all intents and purposes, has been disappointing, and much of that has been poor quarterbacking. There's no denying that. We saw some opportunities where he got deep balls and actually was, there was one where it was like a 30-yard pass, a reception, and I swear it's like by far the longest, downfield throw that I've ever seen him get. But you just gave Christian Kirk a ton of money, right? You have Marvin Jones, you have Laviska Shenault, you have Travis Etienne. If all things go well, right, and this offense actually is good, then there's a possibility that, 3 of these guys have pretty good seasons. If this offense remains middle of the road or worse, now you're talking about a pass catching back in Etienne. Who knows what happens when James Robinson returns? They expect him back by week 1, but like you said, he'll probably be limited. You have Kirk, you have Laviska Shenault, you have Marvin Jones. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and an offense that we have no idea whether or not it's going to be good, even if it's improved, like you said.
It's one of those situations that's trending that way, unfortunately. I really think this could be one of those passing offenses where no one gets to a 25% target share. And honestly, we would need the volume to increase pretty heavily from Trevor Lawrence to make any of those wide receivers worthwhile, because touchdown upside, that's really not something we can rely on. It's something I can hope for, but it almost makes all of these players close to undraftable, in my opinion. I will say that if I draft Trevor Lawrence, who is someone I'm fine drafting, then it becomes a different story. These are little backdoor stacks that I might introduce in my season-long league. But I do think it's a situation where Kirk and Jones hover around 18 to 22% in target share. Zay Jones is also there. He probably gets 11 to 15. Laviska the same. Evan Ingram probably 8 to 10. And then even Dan Arnold has proved, when healthy, a competent receiver. This is the exact situation where you use that cliche you did, Loughy. This is a lot of mouths to feed. I hope Trevor Lawrence passes 50 times a game and we really see him try to become unleashed. He was a great passer really early on in his college career. Like, we thought he was the next Peyton Manning. I'd love to see him try and go do it.
Would you rather draft Christian Kirk with an 88 ADP right now or Marvin Jones at 162?
Oh, give me Marvin Jones.
Right? Like, this is
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. We just assume that because Christian Kirk signed for a lot of money that he's going to be the alpha in this offense and Marvin Jones is going to fade into oblivion. Maybe that'll happen. But you're getting Marvin Jones as a throwaway piece in the final round, one of the final rounds of your draft. Like that on teams like this. And this is where, I don't know, you and I may disagree. On teams like this, with a lot of unknowns, an insane amount of uncertainty, and like you said, Evan Ingram, who knows? Maybe he ends up being halfway competent. I couldn't tell you. We didn't see it in New York, but again, they had immense offensive line issues and a rotating carousel when it came to quarterbacks. But there's a lot of bodies on this offense. Give me the ones that are essentially free, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And if they end up being very good, you're going to get production from these guys that you're drafting in the later rounds of your draft.
Couldn't agree more, actually. To be honest, in the first 100 picks of drafts, I'm still looking for league winners, right? I want players who, if they hit their floor, they're helping me have a steady flow of points. Absolutely. But I still want the upside of them possibly being a league winner. I just don't see it with Christian Kirk. That said, Trevor Lawrence could see his volume increase enough where I want him as a quarterback. And then if I add on a free extra Jaguar, this is a situation where I'll add that on. I mean, even Marvin Jones at 186, again, you're expecting nothing from him, but I'd almost rather have like a little bit more youth, a little bit more athleticism in that spot at the end of drafts.
I'm fine with that too, but it goes back to, the end of drafts for a team like that. Etienne's probably is the exception. I get why he's going in the late third, early fourth round. I think that's fine. We've seen this team, and if this team's in trouble, you're going to see a ton of opportunities pass catch as a pass catching running back. But
hey, you're watching Loughy Savoca, a fantasy football podcast. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you always know what we're up to on the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel. We have new episodes of Loughy Savoca every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch us here or listen wherever you get podcasts today.
I think Miami's another interesting team where you don't necessarily have the same uncertainty when it comes to just, is this offense going to be wildly spread out and are these guys even any good? We know Tyreek Hill's good. We know Jalen Waddle's good. I think Tua can be fine in this offense. I'm actually not as worried as everybody else is, as long as they begin to actually try and open. He had the highest adjusted completion percentage on deep balls last year among qualified players. He just didn't throw deep. So maybe he's not as bad as we think. But what do you do with the offense in the passing game? We'll get to the shit show that is the backfield in a second.
Yeah, so I kind of see the same thing. I know we've been talking about Jalen Hurts from a fantasy perspective. Go back to episode 1 where we kind of debate these two quarterbacks back to back, but I saw the same thing. PlayerProfiler.com uses an accuracy rating system where they give everyone a numerical score on every single throw. And in red zone accuracy, Tua was second in the NFL last year. And in deep ball accuracy, throws of 20 air yards or more, he was sixth in the NFL. It's hard to throw consistently accurate deep balls with the way that the NFL bears down the pass rush on quarterbacks. That's just the bottom line. Now, if you talk about this offense, I still think you bring in a player like Tyreek Hill, give him the contract that he wanted to give him a 25% target share. I just think do that. So it's really hard for me to see Jalen Waddle replicating that target share this year. I think the talent is there for Waddle. I think there will be games where he has, a score and 100 yards. I think that's absolutely in the range of outcomes from a week-to-week basis. But I think he's going to have to do it on efficiency and not volume this year. He was 17th in the NFL in target share. He's going to be used closer to the line of scrimmage continually, but with this team, I think Jalen Waddle's ADP has just not shifted enough, even though it's sitting around the end of round 3 right now, 37.6 underdog ADP right now. It's still not low enough for me, so I'm pretty under the field right now on Jalen Waddle, despite believing in the overall talent. I mean, give me a player who's, a speedster in the slot, 4.37 40, first round pedigree, 6th overall pick. He's a game changer. But they still went out and got Tyreek Hill. That says all I need to know. Yeah, and we saw Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce both pay off first round price tags multiple years in a row. Well, so it's not to say that Hill and Waddle can't. It's just that Tua's not Patrick Mahomes.
And we don't. The good thing is we don't necessarily need him to be Patrick Mahomes because Tyreek Hill would be a first-round pick again in the event that he still had Mahomes throwing to him. But Jalen Waddle, yeah, at 38, would you rather grab Tyreek Hill at 22, 16 picks ahead of him? I think so. But I don't know how much different it's going to – I don't know how much different this team is going to look. And I don't even have a ton of statistical analysis on it because we don't know – new coaching, right? Will we open it up? If they don't open up the offense, then we're in a world of shit. And then you're just relying on these guys to make plays after the catch, which we saw Waddle kind of do. But how many times last year did we see like 10 for 65 or something crazy? So I don't know, man. The good thing is that it could be a relatively concentrated offense or a passing game. With the running backs, I truly have no idea. And I'll tell you what, I am avoiding this right now. Unless it comes there and I go, you know what? It's late in the draft. Once again, these guys are basically free. Chase Edmonds even, 110 ADP. You're not taking a ton of risk. So if you want to just say, slight lean this way, or I think this guy gets the goal line touches, that's probably the only direction to take this.
I'm still taking 28-year-old Raheem Mostert in underdog.
He destroyed
fantasy.
me last year. I was so high on Mostert last year, and he got off to that amazing start in week 1.
It was literally one run, but I was like, oh, it's on for Raheem Mostert.
Yep.
Oh, he got banged up. He's
and
fine.
then Elijah Mitchell went on to have like 100 yards in that game, and I'm just thinking because I had Mostert everywhere in DFS too. He's actually a good running back though, Matt, if he's healthy.
And he's super explosive, right? This is what you want from late round picks. Yes, I talked about youth a minute ago, but that's really because I'm looking for athleticism. And yes, there's some tread on the tires naturally with a 28-and-a-half-year-old running back like Raheem Mostert. But remember, he spent most of his career as a special teamer. He didn't really get used in the San Francisco system. He's hurt. That's the bottom line. He played 8 games in 2020, 1 game, 2 attempts in 2021. But still, he's over the 85th percentile in Player Profiler's speed score, burst score, and at the 40-yard dash. Obviously, goes into the speed score. This is a home run hitter on an offense that now has the ability to take the top off a defense. I mean, we should talk about why they got Tyreek Hill for just a second. It's because Jalen Waddle had a 25% target share, 17th in the NFL, but his air yard share was 56th in the NFL. Tyreek Hill last year, obviously Mahomes is his quarterback. He had a 12th overall air yard share. So they're going to take the top off now. You counter that with a couple run plays from a speedster like a healthy Raheem Mostert. That's my favorite. Our analyst Nick Lepre loves Sony Michel, thinking they're going to pound it in from the goal line a couple extra times. Chase Edmonds at even a pick 110. Again, that's even different than pick 88 for me. That's more league-winning upside, in my opinion.
In 2020, Raheem Mostert had the 2 fastest runs in the entire league. Topped out north of 23 miles per hour. The guy is fast, like you said. He's fast. 23 and then 22.7, 80-yard rushing touchdown, 76-yard receiving touchdown. Just a matter of whether or not he can stay healthy. So I guess the question is, with your last pick in the draft, are you taking a shot on Raheem Mostert? Damn right you are. But
yes, sir.
This goes back again. Like fantasy football is simple. I'm not saying it's simple in the sense that you can just jump in and easily win. And I'm not saying like best ball is simple. What I'm saying is late in drafts, there is one simple formula, at least for me. Give me as much unknown as I can possibly get. I want the situation. I want the waters to be so muddied that you can't see your hand if you stick it in there. With Raheem Mostert, with this Miami backfield, it is. You have no idea. You have no idea what's going to happen. So it's like, all right, Chase Edmonds at 110, which, by the way, I don't even think is that bad. He never had goal line opportunities in Arizona. That's why we liked James Conner last year. It was just that you had a good feeling a guy that had 1 goal line carry over the previous 2 seasons or whatever probably wasn't going to get there.
We know who he is.
Yeah, we know who he is. Exactly. So 6th-round ADP, you're like, shit. With James Conner, sure, 10th, some spots 11th. You're like, we don't really know who he is, but we don't pay much. With Raheem Mostert, we know he's good. Well, we know he's fast. We know he's been efficient when given the opportunity. And we know that, yes, he's 28, but he doesn't have a ton of mileage in the sense of like a ton of carries. He just gets hurt a lot. Certain players get hurt a lot and then don't get hurt again. Certain players never get hurt and then they get hurt 13 times in 2 seasons. But at 188 ADP, I don't want people to confuse this for you and me saying that like, we love Raheem Mostert. I love the fact that I can get him as a complete throwaway pick. And what happens if he ends up being the guy, or what happens if this offense ends up being good and he's seeing like 13 touches a game?
Here's one thing I do think we see a turnaround because of their hiring of Mike McDaniel from that San Francisco team that was ready to feature Raheem Mostert. I think we're going to see them improve significantly from their 29th overall rush DVOA rating, and they were in the bottom 8 in overall offensive DVOA, Football Outsiders key team metric. And so I think we are going to see them establish the run so that they can take the top off the defense with their new speedster in Tyreek Hill. I think they're much more likely than the other bottom teams like Houston, Atlanta, and New Orleans, or the Giants, to turn around their rushing game this year. And so that's another reason why I'll take my chances on a late round pick, especially one who doesn't necessarily need a lot of goal line carries to hit.
I'm with you. And we don't need to be right. That's the great thing about this. If you're not right, and this isn't a cop-out, but I'm saying if you're not right that late in the draft, there's a good chance the other guy that you were going to take at 188, you're not going to be right about him either. You know,
right.
Like what's the hit rate on 18th round picks?
You feel good if you get 2 to 3 startable weeks. You've done well for yourself with that pick. The most likely outcome for that last round pick, you drop them.
Yeah, and for sure. And obviously, I was referring just to best ball there because most of it's going to go undrafted in the majority of home leagues, right? 16 rounds, whatever, 15 rounds, some of them. He's probably going to go undrafted. But like you said, yeah, you get 0 startable weeks from him normally if it's best ball, and in the event that it's a home league, yeah, you probably end up dropping them. Anything else for Miami that's worth talking about in the event that this offense is good?
I think Mike Gesicki's being overdrafted as well. He's being drafted because of the situation improvement, but I don't think we're going to see a 9th overall target share among tight ends. 5th overall air yard share. I'm sorry, you're just not getting the same level of deep opportunities that he got last year when there were no players taking the top off. Hey guys, if you haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy yet, what are you waiting for? The Best Ball Mania 2 winner in 2021 drafted their $1 million winning team in June. So you're already behind. Make sure you get in there. They have so many great tournament options. The Best Ball Mania 3 tournament has 3 separate opportunities to take down $1 million. There's going to be one lucky winner who wins the regular season prize and is just smoking a cigar the whole playoffs because they've already won $1 million and they have a chance to win $2 million more. They've also had puppy tournaments throughout the summer. The Puppy 2 has just released, just $5 entry. And if you use promo code AWESEMO, you can get up to a $100 first match deposit bonus. That's 4 free entries to the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament, or 20 free entries to the Puppy 2 tournament, or mix and match a little bit. Honestly, free money is hard to come by in betting best ball or fantasy football, and this is one of those rare opportunities. Take advantage of it. Underdog Fantasy, promo code AWESEMO.
It's funny too, because you look at a team in the Cleveland Browns that heading into this year, there was still a lot of uncertainty there as well with the Deshaun Watson status. Who knows what it's going to look like? Does he miss half the season? Does he miss the entire season? You're thinking, God, this team could be good. Just ample goal line opportunities for guys like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They're just explosive, finally playing with a legitimate quarterback. And now we have no idea what's going on with him. And we knew that it was probably going to be Jacoby Brissett because Baker Mayfield had, essentially irreparable damage there in Cleveland. Blame it on whoever you want, but it seemed like it was irreconcilable, Matt.
Yep.
And now he's in Carolina, where you actually have some good weapons. If McCaffrey stays healthy, DJ Moore, like they have a foundation, But does Baker Mayfield, since this trade, actually move the needle enough to where we look at these guys and go, I'm boosting them up my rankings?
It's tough. I think we do have a level of confidence that fantasy relevancy is more likely with Baker Mayfield than with Sam Darnold. I think that's kind of unequivocal. We've at least seen Baker Mayfield be a competent quarterback of a quality offense. Now, not taking anything away from that very talented supporting cast that Baker Mayfield had when he was at his best, but Robbie Anderson has proved to be a 1,000-yard receiver in this league. DJ Moore is in the top 10 of receiving yards, total receiving yards among all wide receivers over the last 3 seasons. And McCaffrey, we know when he's healthy, he is an absolute game changer in the backfield. He's got the weaponry. He just was really, really unhealthy last year to the point where I don't think he should have put that on film. Like, I think he should have shut it down. And we'd have a very different opinion about him. Because remember, in 2020, the Browns overperformed. They looked like they could actually get to the conference championship game because Patrick Mahomes was not in the divisional round game. He got knocked out, if you remember. But
right.
I digress. This team, this Carolina team, actually is fine for me now. I think those players are talented enough where at ADP, all of them are fine values. Even Christian McCaffrey, we know he has number 1 player in fantasy upside at the number 2 overall pick. We know that DJ Moore is just he's got tons of breakout potential, and we know that Robbie Anderson has done it before. We'll see their ADPs rise a little bit, but honestly, this gives me a ton more confidence, not about the team's overall status, but about the fantasy offense's relevancy.
Robbie Anderson too?
It's not like I need it.
No, I know. I'm curious.
I have already drafted on Underdog Fantasy a Carolina super stack. Lucky enough to get an early first-round pick. That's obviously randomness, but absolutely. I got Baker Mayfield, I got Robbie Anderson, and I included Christian McCaffrey because if he's hitting, he's catching plenty of passes.
Are you drafting Cooper Kupp or Christian McCaffrey if you have the 2nd overall pick? Hell, I'll ask, if you have the 1st overall pick, are you definitely going Jonathan Taylor?
So in best ball, yes, I am, because I'm not going to get Jonathan Taylor at the 102 or 103. Honestly, I have mixed it up this year with Cooper Kupp versus Christian McCaffrey. It is a situation where we're splitting hairs. I think I'm going with the bell cow running back, knowing how some drafts get so running back heavy that by the time it gets back to me at the 23rd pick, the scarcity level is worse at the running back position than the wide receiver position. That takes nothing away from how good I think Cooper Kupp will be once again.
If it's full PPR, are you definitely going with Christian
McCaffrey?
Cooper Kupp
1 overall.
Cooper Kupp 1 overall. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Christian McCaffrey could have 90 receptions too. I mean,
it's true. That's why he's so good. He might be the 3rd overall pick. Obviously these are real choices that people deal with all the time, but there's a reason these guys are high first-round picks. They have almost no warts on the profile when healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Man, McCaffrey had back-to-back seasons with 107 plus receptions.
This is another one, right? This goes back to that injury-prone conversation. People get hurt a bunch of times in a row, and then we see them for years not get hurt. Christian McCaffrey was considered one of those players who somehow doesn't get hurt, gets that huge contract from Carolina, and then suddenly he's hurt 2 seasons in a row. I always go back to Frank Gore. Came out of Miami, considered injury prone, ends up playing 1 million years in the NFL and is a surefire Hall of Famer because of his longevity.
Do you know where he ranks in most rushing yards all time?
It's probably top 8?
Take a guess.
I'm going to say 8th.
3.
People just don't do it that long.
Emmett Smith and Walter Payton ahead of him.
That's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He'll be waltzing right into Canton. That's amazing.
When I heard that, I forget who I was. I don't remember who I was talking to, but I remember. There's a couple of buddies of mine just hanging out, having some drinks, talking about like the best running backs of all time and the ones we enjoyed watching most. And we looked up yards because we were seeing what Adrian Peterson needed to get to pass Barry Sanders. It's like 200, it's like 350 yards or 200, something like that, 350, whatever. And he's reading him off, and he's like, yeah, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, Frank Gore. Frank Gore has 16,000 even. I mean, just remarkable, man. Who would have thought?
Poetic. And he's got a kid, I think, like 2 years until draft eligible. Like we may see a Gore kid in the NFL draft very soon.
That'd be crazy. Remember, people thought Gore on the Chiefs was
Derek.
like his
Good
son.
try, everyone.
Wow, LaShawn McCoy top 22 as well.
Impressive stuff.
Wouldn't have thought that. Wouldn't have thought that at all. Where do you think LaDainian Tomlinson ranks?
Okay. I'm going to say 25.
7th.
Oh my gosh. I totally underrated you, LaDainian.
Yeah,
sorry. I forgot about your Jets ears in my head. That's really what it was.
Jerome Bettis, 8. Eric Dickerson, 9. Tony Dorsett, 10. There's some names on here, like Fred Taylor's 17th all time.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, when you get into the top 20 all time, from a longevity standpoint and your ability to stay on the field and as a starter at the running back position, that's just impressive on its own. And that's what some of these career stats ends up looking like to me. Now, I want to tee you up for a question because I think I might know the answer. Modern era, let's say 2008 forward, your favorite running back, if you just want one game, you just want your favorite running back, the best.
You know this answer,
most fun,
don't you?
I think I do because I think we have the same one.
Who?
Jamal Charles.
I fucking love Jamal Charles, man. He was by far most for me. And how old are you? I'm 35. You're 30,
yeah, I'm 32. I'm right there.
32. So like watching, you want to talk about a career that was stymied by injuries, that this guy could have been. I mean, just it's unreal. The game against the Broncos, the game against the Raiders. Go back and watch these if you haven't. Was there anybody at the time that was more? I'm serious, like more fun. I would have enjoyed watching him over Tomlinson, over Peterson, because his running style was so exceptional, man. I loved Jamal Charles. Could talk about that guy all day.
Me too. That Raiders game where he scored 5 touchdowns. Honestly, I was in my first league that I was taking seriously. It kind of brought me down the road of like, do I love this game so much that I want to do this all the time? Truly, that Jamal Charles game, as weird as it sounds, somewhat life-changing.
I believe that was the fantasy championships as well.
Yeah, it was. It was like week 16. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And I also wonder, too, I play the what-if game for just a second. He was crushing early in the 2015 season. 2017, Patrick Mahomes walks through that door. Not saying that he would have been the exact same player, but if he hadn't torn his ACL, it's really hard to see him degrading to the point where he wouldn't have been the starting running back. We could have seen a veteran Jamal Charles and a young Patrick Mahomes.
It would have been so much fun. And do you remember why Jamal Charles got because remember, in that 2009 season, Jamal Charles was not the feature back. It was Larry Johnson, right? It was Larry Johnson.
I think we're going back. I think the first relevant year for Charles was like 2010 or 11. Am I wrong there? Larry Johnson, he overlapped with? Wow, he was a little bit older than
dude,
I thought.
I'm gonna tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. So, and just to make sure I'm right about this, I'll pull up his stats. He won me a fantasy league that year in 2009. I'm almost 100% certain. 2000. There it is.
You're absolutely right.
He had 1,120 yards, and almost all of them came in the second half of the season, because Larry Johnson, who was the coach at the time? Who the hell was the coach? It was Todd Haley. He called Todd Haley the F word. Yeah.
No.
With a hard OT. And after that happened, Larry Johnson was done. Jamal Charles came in and took the reins. That's why it happened. Larry Johnson probably would have continued to get the work that year had that not happened.
That is crazy. And then by 2010, I was wrong. Yeah, by 2010, he was first team All Pro, Pro Bowler. Jamal Charles, amazing. And career cut a little bit short there, but still we saw a lot of incredible performances. I do want to mention one other team here in the show me something category because I am taking chances. I just broke down a best ball draft, an underdog fantasy draft with my buddy Nick Lepre on the Stokastic Best Ball channel, where he had a stack happy draft with the New York Giants. Brian Dable and the assistant general manager also come over from the Buffalo Bills. This is part of the regime that helped build up Josh Allen from a cannon-armed, wildly inaccurate gunslinger to one of the best fantasy and real-life quarterbacks in the NFL. And the receiving core between Kenny Golladay and the new second-round pick, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the exciting stuff we saw last year from Kadarius Toney, I think this is a situation where there's enough good supporting cast, offensive line excluded here, that we can figure out this year if Daniel Jones is legit. He's got some rushing upside. I am taking some chances that they actually pull it together in the Meadowlands and that the New York Giants, in a division that is a little bit more wide open than the Eagles or the Cowboys want to admit, can actually take the next step. Is that crazy?
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's really difficult, again, for me to try and figure out who's going to be the guy here. And in doing so, okay, so you have Wan'Dale Robinson, you have Kenny Golladay, you have Kadarius Toney, who showed flashes last year, also punched the helmet with his bare fist.
Not good.
You have, Sterling Shepard. The injury history with Sterling Shepard has been really tough. So who knows what happens with him? But God, this is okay. So Ben Rasa has. I love this saying that Ben, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's just an overall philosophy when it comes to DFS or fantasy football or anything for this matter, where he generally tries to avoid situations where, and in this case, opportunity cost is a thing. So let's put that to the side for a second, and then we can discuss that, right? But
sure,
generally tries to avoid situations where it's, I have to get two things right, in the sense of, one, we have to get it right that the New York Giants, for the first time in a long time, are finally a competent offense and a competent team. More so, competent offense in the sense that they can support more than one or two players. Last year, God, I don't know if they could support any
of them.
Two, after we get that right, then we have to get right the fact that we need to get the players right that are going to be the most efficient or the most productive in this offense in the event that first it is actually good. So, of course, we can talk, there is nuance. We can talk opportunity cost, but that is the one thing that concerns me here. Similarly with Jacksonville as well.
Very fair. In adjusted line yards, Football Outsiders key offensive line stat, the Giants were 31st of 32 teams. They were up there among the worst rushing lines with the Houston Texans and the aforementioned Miami Dolphins. This is not necessarily the offensive line that had a huge improvement. I mean, they just may not have the offensive line to let Daniel Jones be even a competent quarterback.
Well, let me ask you this then, Matt. If let's just say they are good, right? Or they're better and they can actually produce some decent enough fantasy players. Now that we do have ADPs and they'll change from best ball to home leagues, who are you most interested in if you're drafting? Like, are you going second round on Saquon Barkley? Are you saying Kadarius Toney is worth, 5 rounds higher, 4 round higher pick than Kenny Golladay?
For me, I'm absolutely fine taking Saquon Barkley, especially when I'm considering it in best ball, a part of like a robust RB strategy or a hyper fragile strategy where I'll take a running back at the top, maybe the first 3 picks. Then it comes back around. Saquon is typically there towards the end of the second, beginning of the third. And then I'll finish up the majority, like the main expected points of the running back position by the 3rd or 4th round. That's an absolutely viable strategy in the Best Ball Mania or Pup 3 tournament. ADP is tough for Saquon Barkley, but when healthy, from an efficiency standpoint and from a pass catching standpoint, I think he can overcome a poor offensive line if the offense is able to overcome that deficiency there. Then you talk about the ADPs, opportunity costs, as you mentioned, of these players. Kadarius Toney barely inside the top 90 picks. I'm fine taking a chance on him to be honest, my favorite ADP of this team is Kenny Golladay. Just the amount of money he was paid, the big play ability of Kenny Golladay. I'm certain they're going to try to unlock him in a way that the Joe Judge offense was not capable of doing this year. And you just have to spend like no draft capital on him. 10th, 11th round, very easy to get this year. So Kenny Golladay, honestly, my favorite ADP of the New York Giants.
What about Robinson, who's going, almost undrafted?
Absolutely love players like Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Second round draft capital. I mean, this guy was picked just outside the top 40 picks in the NFL draft. Obviously has a ton of talent, 4.4 speed, 5'8", 179. So he's probably going to be that slot prototype, but we're not 100% sure. Like, that's Tyreek Hill's frame. He takes the top off of defenses. Bottom line, if you have that much draft capital in a player and he's free in fantasy draft capital, it's probably a good bet, even if the team outlook doesn't look that great on paper.
It's all going to come down to that offensive line. It has to, right? It has to.
I mean, it just has to get to a little bit closer to average, and we can see what we've got with these players, right? Because they've got some talent.
If it's average, they can be fine because Daniel Jones can actually run a little bit. He's not proficient, but he can run a little bit. Watched him do it against the Eagles. I've watched him take off for 70 yards.
Could have been more. Could have been more. He fell.
Before he tripped over the 10. But they can be there. It's just, again, for me, it's all opportunity cost. Like, how much do I want to invest in a team in the single digit rounds that could still be bad? And that's, that's just risk assessment. Some people might say, no, I have a lot of faith in this team. I think they'll be a lot better. I mean, probably our producer, Chris Karen, thinks they're going to be great this year.
He's pointing his thumbs down.
Gave us the thumbs down. But it's possible. I don't think great, but we don't need them to win 12 games. We just, like you said, be competent. If you're competent, then those guys late in the draft could pay it off. I'm a little lower on Saquon Barkley, but that's okay. And the only reason I'm lower on Saquon Barkley is because there are some other running backs, and maybe next episode we can get into some of this running back talk. I think the running back position is so fascinating this year with some of the rookies and some of the later round guys, and like you said, a lot of the guys that burned people last year, the post hype sleepers. There's so much that I think opportunity cost with Barkley actually is a little bit high, and we can get into that some other time, but. That's just, again, it's a personal preference here from other guys that I can get a little later to Saquon Barkley. In your case, you just like Barkley. You just like Barkley this year enough to say, yeah, he's definitely worth second round because I know and I've seen what he can do before.
I think the DeMarco Murray corollary is fully in play here, where they don't plan on signing Saquon Barkley to a long-term contract, but they do plan on using him for about 400 opportunities this year.
I think, honestly, that's where I think you could see something similar with a Rashad Penny. I'm not saying 400, and he's injury prone too, but why sign the guy to a 1 year deal if you're not, like, they know they're going to be bad. They know that they're not going to win or stay competitive in any games throwing the football. Do you just run Penny till the wheels fall off for the first year and then turn it over to Ken Walker? I think it's totally possible. And guess what? Doesn't matter because he's a late 9th round pick this season after being the RB1 over the final 5 weeks of 2021, baby.
Take your chances on both, to be honest. I like your chances with Rashad Penny. When healthy, he did it. He proved that he could do it. He was
awesome. Number one in like every relevant metric over the final 5 weeks of the season.
You literally have the film and the stats to back up your pick. The risk assessment is built in to that ADP. And you know what? I'm still taking some Ken Walker because I believe that they might unleash him and he might get hurt again in week 2. He's a fine pick as well. You have to understand that this is a game of probabilities. You have enough upside and the cost is low enough where Rashad Penny is a slam pick where at his ADP. He just is. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that Ken Walker is undraftable despite being
totally agree.
Similar expectations, but just lower ADP. So again, we've seen Rashad Penny get hurt more often than be RB1, but we haven't seen a whole lot of running backs actually put 5 games of RB1 potential on film.
And people can argue, and next episode get into some of these backfields that are polarizing, because that's like the most fun when it comes to fantasy football for me, is discussing situations that we don't know and people think they know, but they really don't know. And then it turns out that one guy just goes 5 rounds or 4 rounds ahead of the other guy, who it becomes a complete afterthought, left for dead. And now you can plug him in at as you said, no cost. But it's hard to say, man. Like Penny could get hurt, and we've seen him get hurt. And people argued that it was because he had an easy schedule down the stretch, which is why he succeeded. It's like, yeah, okay, he had an easy schedule, but he wasn't okay. He had 130 plus rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games with 7 touchdowns. So say what you want, he capitalized on every opportunity he was given. You can't pick who you play. You just got to beat him. So, yeah. I know I'm getting off track, Matt, and I think we got a little bit of time. I want to ask you, even though we don't expect them to be good, what in the world do you do? People want to know this. What in the world do you do with the pass catchers for the Seattle Seahawks this year?
You got to give some credence to the fact that Russell Wilson wasn't typical Russell Wilson. Listen to Wilson's total passing yards in his week 14 on games: 260, 156, 181, 236, 238.
Yeah.
Now
thank you, Rashad Penny, right?
That was the first point. Correlates perfectly to the time where Rashad Penny was taking over that offense. But it also shows you Russell was not cooking anymore. No. He was not cooking at all. No, they were ordering takeout. And so Drew Lock is probably capable of 156 yards passing. He's probably capable of 181 yards passing, which is the same situation that Lockett and Metcalf were dealing with at the end of last season. I'm not saying I like Drew Lock. I'm not saying I have more than the field on Drew Lock, but I will take chances on Lockett or Metcalf. It's one of those situations where we know all the things that could go wrong. We know all the reasons why their ADP is lower this year than last year. I don't love their ADPs, but if it's a glaring value, I'll take those two. I'll take chances on both Lockett and Metcalf anytime I see it when it's an obvious value.
I mean, Lockett has an ADP that's almost in the triple digits, which is pretty wild. If assuming Drew Lock starts, it looks like we're trending in that direction, but assuming he starts, he has every year he's a starter or he gets starts, he has the highest or one of the highest deep ball percentages in the league. He just has one of the lowest completion rates on deep balls. He's gonna throw them though. So, if you're okay with the opportunities, maybe not the greatest opportunity, not the highest quality, because Russell Wilson, the injury was rough, but Russell Wilson, is he the best deep ball artist in the league still? Russell Wilson?
When healthy, man, it's hard to say. Many people are better in money throws, which is one of my favorite stats for this. It takes deep throws that take either exceptional accuracy or athleticism. Even with the time missed last year, he was 21st in the league. In 2020, he had 33 money throws, 5th in the league. He had 40 touchdowns in 2020, guys.
Yeah.
It's a guy who really could improve significantly a year removed from that hand injury. I mean, obviously, we talked about them a ton on the top offenses, but I do think that target quality can't be understated. Drew Lock may not be good enough at all to get Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf open deep. But the ADPs, once again, are low enough where, if I'm doing multiple drafts, I'll take a shot on either of them. Not both.
Me too. Yeah, why not? And I'm taking a shot on Penny, and he's going to be running behind the not great line on a bad team. So, but hey, you have a situation where you go from Russell Wilson to Drew Lock, or really, I mean, whoever it is that starts there, whether it's Drew Lock or like Geno Smith, it probably doesn't matter all that much. In Indianapolis, though, you went from Carson Wentz, who statistically was fine last year, but to act like Matt Ryan isn't an upgrade over Carson Wentz, I think it's crazy. Matt Ryan was playing with a skeleton crew last year, and his top option being a rookie tight end / receiver in Kyle Pitts, and he still got him over 1,000 yards, albeit albeit 17-week season. But what does this do for a guy like Michael Pittman?
This team, man, I'm really excited. There was an article that recently got posted about the change in the locker room, the change in the air in Indianapolis when moving on from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan.
Is a dick.
And I don't know. I never met the guy, but it certainly seems like Matt Ryan's leadership ability is being felt in a way, and his accuracy on the field is being noted by his receivers. Pittman is a wide receiver one, like a player that we're drafting at the end of the first round in future fantasy drafts. He's got that potential all over him. And if Matt Ryan, as we know, can lean on his wide receiver one, he will absolutely do that. I love this offense, to be honest. You need the first overall pick, as we mentioned, to take advantage of the running game because Jonathan Taylor was that good. He deserves the 101 this year. And it's kind of hard after Pittman, right? Because we've got injuries, we've got second-round picks, we've got Jack Doyle no longer on the team. Honestly, in best ball situations, give me 1, give me 2, give me 3. I love stacking the Indianapolis Colts with Pittman. Mo Alley Cox, the expected tight end starter. Take a chance on Alec Pierce. I personally like Paris Campbell, also a player who has a ton of athletic upside but can't stay healthy. This is a team that also has a really easy division, playing against the Jaguars and the Houston Texans twice. You know, they only got to compete with Tennessee for the division crown. And I've seen some analytics experts say because of their strength of schedule being really, really low compared to other teams with playoff expectations, you might see the Colts in the divisional or even the conference championship round in a very tough AFC.
Ooh. I love Michael Pittman this year.
Is he one of your breakouts?
Loved him last year, and he was fine. You know, he was fine. He started off so hot. He had like a 35% target share through the first few weeks and cooled off, but so did Wentz. And Paris Campbell's never stayed healthy, but I have no problems with Paris Campbell as your second to last or last round of your draft. No issues with that whatsoever. And another thing, Matt Ryan was dealing with a constant barrage of pressure running or behind that Atlanta line. This is a Colts offensive line that PFF has currently ranked inside their top 10 with upside to be better. This is going to be a much easier time. And another thing here, this is why this is kind of simple, right? Outside of what isn't simple is figuring out who's going to be good other than Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. But not only do you have the offensive line, you also have a bona fide, like you have arguably the preeminent run game in the league with Jonathan Taylor. You were running out Cordero Patterson last year and Mike Davis. Like these guys, Patterson was good. I get it. But I mean, that's not
when they turned him to just a running back. He was actually quite bad when they made him a traditional running back.
For sure. Absolutely. But they used him as an extension of the run to an extent. My point is they averaged, I think, the second fewest rushing yards per game. They weren't a good running team. Matt Ryan was sacked, I think, third most in the league. Now we might see a bit of a revival here with Matt Ryan as well, just given that he actually has the tools around him to succeed again.
Do you remember how good they were with a competent offensive coordinator in Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah.
Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman, both fantasy relevant in the backfield, and Julio Jones doing his thing at wide receiver one. I'm not saying go out and get Nyheim Hines, but we literally saw the coach say, I'd play Nyheim Hines in fantasy. Not a lot of other coaches said that about their running back too. They clearly have designed packages for their running back too. They've got a great line. They now have a more accurate quarterback. This is a situation I need to take my chances on, whether it's early in the draft like Taylor, Pittman, or Ryan himself, or one of these later round picks. Just give me all the Colts. Even Alec Pierce, who I don't love this, as a second round pick. It's a pretty competent front office. They've hit on a lot of second round picks. What if he's the next like Cooper Kupp type? Because that's where he'll play traditionally in the slot.
If you guys haven't subscribed to the podcast, Apple Podcast, wherever it is, go ahead and hit that now. Or if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. All of it helps us greatly. While you're at it, follow Matt at Draftaholic on Twitter, myself at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Should have done this all at the top of the show, but I got excited. Any other spots you want to hit on before we get out of here? I know we had a couple things that we probably won't get to. Philly, we've spoken about them a lot. We still got a couple months before the season starts. Raiders touched on them a little last week. I guess the only other spot to me would be San Francisco.
This one is so interesting, and we can keep it pretty brief, right? Because the expectations for this team have not changed. This is a team competing for a Super Bowl last year in the conference championship game. Their defense is incredible. Their running game, well, at least with Mike McDaniels at the helm, new Miami coach, was fantastic. And we don't expect a huge amount of fall off with Kyle Shanahan still there and a very competent offensive line and backfield. You got really interesting weapons like Deebo Samuel turning into one of the most do-it-all hybrid players. Just a super interesting role carved out for him within the offense. George Kittle, one of the best. I called him a freak of nature on the Best Ball channel in a recent short video, and he's going with an ADP outside the top 4 tight ends. It's all about Trey Lance and the fear that the running quarterback taking away opportunity from other players will do that is pushing down their fantasy ADP. I think Kittle might actually be the best value at the position. If you're talking about lowest ADP and highest probability of being the tight end 1 or 2. Am I crazy there? He's had some of the best tight end weeks we've ever seen, and young quarterbacks tend to lean on tight ends on the dump down option.
I love George Kittle. Okay, so do we expect Deebo Samuel to play week 1?
My prediction is that they agree to a mega deal before or during training camp.
Okay, because that's huge. If let's say they didn't, and Deebo Samuel is not on the field, George Kittle's value, I don't care if you have, I don't care if you have a giraffe at quarterback, and I'm not Mike Glennon. I don't care who you have at quarterback. You're going to have George Kittle just get peppered with targets. With Deebo Samuel, I think they can still coexist, but like what happens with Ayuk and already a run heavy approach? Is Kittle your favorite pass catching option on this team based on ADP?
Yeah, he is. I mean, I like the talent of Brandon Ayuk. Honestly, it was 2 seasons ago, going into his second year, that I was more excited. So I guess that's 1 season ago. And then Deebo Samuel, honestly, he was the best rusher they had, and he was just the best. They just got the ball into his hands. You'd just like to see more teams do that. But we're not taking away Kittle's snap share anytime soon because he's an incredible blocker. And even if he is technically the number 2 receiver in terms of total targets, I think there are going to be plenty of plays on a per game basis that he is the first option, especially with Trey Lance coming in and probably not progressing through his reads the same exact ways that Jimmy Garoppolo does. I think they will lean on check down easy options to Kittle, especially with speedsters and playmakers like Deebo and Ayuk on the outside. So Kittle at tight end 5 typically, all over that.
We'll be back, episode 4, talking, what do you say, running backs, getting into some of those backfields.
Back for the backfields. I dig it.
Have a great weekend, everyone. See you back here Friday.